Welcome to Construct Tech TV, and I'm Peggy Smedley. Prefab, off-site construction, modular building, factory-built homes, it goes by many different names, but the concept is still the same. Building structures in a manufacturing type setting. There are big opportunities here and some challenges as well. But one thing is undisputable. This type of construction is on the rise. IBIS World says that during the past 5 years, prefabricated home manufacturing has grown by a whopping 8.6%. At the same time, the number of businesses has risen by only 1.1%, and the number of employees has grown by 2.7%. This extends well beyond just the residential market. But there's more. We are actually now seeing the greatest adoption on commercial projects. The National Institute of Building Sciences of Off-Site Construction Council reveals some interesting insights into this prefab revolution. Back in 2014, it initially conducted a survey to identify both the challenges and opportunities. It recently unveiled the study results for 2018, and here's what it showed. 53.9% of the projects that used off-site construction were actually commercial projects, followed by multifamily housing at 38.5%. Industrial and healthcare came in next at 33.3% and 31.3% respectively. Construction managers, or GCs, most often requested this type of delivery, with the architect and owner trailing closely behind. Perhaps even more interesting are the barriers to entry. We need to address these if we are going to move forward. This report lists more than a dozen, and you can access the full report at www.nibs.org. But for our sake, here today, let's hit on the top 5. First, late design changes, which we all know can stall a project and add to the schedule. Second, not being designed for off-site, and that simply means they haven't set the project up in the way it needs to be. Third, distance from factory to site is a barrier. If transportation and logistics aren't ideal, it can add to the schedule as well. Finally, the last 2 challenges are design and construction culture and industry knowledge and skills. I can't emphasize enough the importance of these. The construction industry has worked the same for decades. Driving a culture of change across the industry is not an easy feat, but it's not impossible. The industry needs to understand why change is important and then build the portfolio of skills to forge ahead. While we are on the topic of hurdles, there are a few others that need to be addressed here today. A report from WSP about modular construction for multifamily affordable housing points to a few. First, some organized labor have opposed factory-built housing on the grounds that it is a net loss of union labor. Also, there is a challenge of upfront cost. Some of these projects require a deposit of 50%, while others require payment in full. To help here, UC Berkeley recommends affordable construction loans from lenders who develop digital tracking of material flows. Along the same lines, another setback can be pricing uncertainty. In order to pay those upfront costs, developers need to know the cost well in advance. This is where partnerships become key. Developers could team up with the factory and proceed through the financing and design process. Finally, those permitting approvals. I've talked about them quite a bit this year. Burdensome permitting and environmental approvals that can potentially block development. Some states are taking the steps to streamline the permitting process with the assistance of technology. But more can still be done. Those are the challenges. But the benefits are going to really catapult us forward. It can be easily argued that the 2 biggest benefits are time and cost savings. The numbers are pretty impressive too. The Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley shows reductions in construction costs were 20% with factory-built housing. That WSP report that we talked about shows 40 to 50% reduction in the timeline. Interestingly, the initial planning phases from schematic design to permits and approval are the same. But the fact that the manufacturing facility builds the modules while the site is being prepared speeds progress significantly. The National Institute of Building Sciences digs into this a little bit deeper. It asks respondents expected benefits of using off-site. More than 80%, that's right, 80%, expect it to enhance the schedule. That's really significant if you look at these numbers. More than 71% did in fact realize greater speed to market. One of the benefits that wasn't quite as expected was an improvement in site operations, which was experienced by 32.1% of companies. Beyond time and cost, there are a few other benefits according to WSP. We see that overall waste is reduced between 10 to 15% compared to conventional projects. Also, projects reported 80% lower accident rates than site-intensive construction. And finally, these projects open the door for a more diversified labor force. For example, in Katerra's Phoenix factory, women make up 40% of the workforce compared to the traditional 9% in the broad industry. Do I think all projects can be done in an off-site environment? No. But there are some real opportunities here to look to manufacturing to improve productivity, heighten safety, and save some costs. Now is the time to think outside the box. Innovative technologies are continuing to emerge, demonstrating their impact on the pace and rate of construction. The task at hand now is determining will prefab prove to be a cost-effective technology to play a greater role on construction projects. Come, stick around as we explore this even further on this episode. Founded in 1965, the National Precast Concrete Association is dedicated to expanding the use of quality precast concrete. It works closely with companies that manufacture products, that create and rebuild infrastructure, protect the environment, and offer modular design possibilities. So with all this in mind, and to talk about prefab, today I am joined with Ty Gable, President of the National Precast Concrete Association. Ty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Peggy.
So Ty, how many precast manufacturers are there right now in North America?
In North America, there are approximately 2,100 companies. That is throughout the United States, all 50 states, and then 9 Canadian provinces.
When we talk about sales and total footprint, can you walk me through that a little bit as well?
The industry is localized. It is, as I mentioned, in all 50 states and 9 Canadian provinces. It's a very local industry. But if you look at it for all of North America, it has about a $21.4 billion footprint. At least that's what we're forecasting for 2019. So it is a larger industry than many people think.
So before the show, you and I were talking about that you're seeing a really great economy overall, and it's been good. And it's really great to hear that at times when we talk about how good things are going. What's your forecast, I think, going forward on kind of the typical, I'd say, applications that make for such a good economy right now for the precast industry right now?
Well, thanks for asking that. The precast concrete industry is very diverse, and so we make products for all industries, residential, commercial. But the biggest growth area for us, there are basically 2 for 2019 that are bigger than any of the others. One is water and wastewater. The conveyance systems are big and growing, and that has a lot to do with some of the exciting new public-private partnerships that are going on. Also, the governments are to a point where they've got to fund new infrastructure because the old stuff is failing and they've simply outgrown it. So load is a big thing, and expanding these systems is big. So water and wastewater is huge. Another big area is airport construction. Our airports, as you might have heard, are in real need of upgrading and expansion. And so precast concrete is a perfect application of that for drainage structures, for utility structures, and also for some public building type structures in the airport buildings themselves.
When you look at that, when the types of projects, we're not talking short term, we're talking projects that have some long-term growth opportunities, and that's what makes the industry really look positive right now and feel very upbeat. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Of course, the one dark cloud on the horizon is the transportation bill. You know, if Congress can get something done that is
well, now we're talking about Congress get something done. Now that's a whole nother nightmare all in itself, right? We got to get them to work together, right?
Yeah, it certainly is. And what we need is serious funding that will last for a period of 5 to 6 years, not Band-Aid approaches or stopgap measures. So we need a bill that'll fund our infrastructure, our roads, bridges, and highways for at least 5 or 6 years, so that the states can plan on how to use the money. So that's a real need, and if that's not addressed, I think we may be seeing a bit of a recession in 20 or 21.
And looking at that with the transportation bill, what's your thoughts on the real outlook of that really moving forward? Because there's some real concern that you just said on that.
Well, we're optimistic. We believe that Congress will realize the problem and address it. We hope they'll do that. But the good news is that many states and municipalities are addressing these issues on their own and finding ways to fund them on their own. And that's a good thing. So the federal government is key and critical here. Funding is key and critical, but states and municipalities are figuring out how to meet these needs on their own, and that's also promising.
And that's an interesting point that you make, whether the municipalities are starting to figure out what they can do and construction's figuring out what they can do. There's a lot of unique building projects that are going out, figuring out how to build things differently. You know, we're seeing a lot of modular building, new ways of construction. Even if government can't figure out how to play nice and figure out how the Dems and the Republicans, whatever, can figure out what to do together, construction's figuring out how they've got to make themselves prosper in different ways. Isn't that things that we're seeing right now?
Peggy, absolutely. Contractors are looking for ways to save time on the job site. Obviously, what you want to do is get the solution in place and operable as fast as possible, but you want to make sure it's a good quality structure. So the precast concrete is perfect for that because it is modular. We manufacture these products to specifications in a quality-controlled, climate-controlled plant environment. They come to full strength in that environment and then are shipped to the job site and are staged as the contractor needs them and are installed in a modular fashion. This saves a lot of time on the job site, but also it ensures some strong quality and less disruption in the site. So these are trends that are happening that we're pretty excited about because we fit right into that.
And are we talking about the ability to open up for new jobs when we think about in the construction industry about the ability to train new workers of the future when we talk about this new type of, I don't want to say new type of construction, but the ability to do the type of development that we're talking about?
Well, every successful construction trade association and contractor I have ever seen takes training and manpower and recruiting seriously. It's right at the top of their list. And if they don't do that, it certainly will hurt them. Our industry has done that as well. About 10 years ago, we developed Precast University to train people in the plants in how to make good quality concrete. It takes it from very introduction of what concrete is and how it works all the way up through technological training, management training, and how to deliver a good quality product first time and every time. So the key is training, and the industry understands that and is more and more committed to that every day.
So we're talking about innovation. We're talking about improving the transportation bill. We're talking about impacting infrastructure. You guys have it all put together all the way around right now.
Well, we like to think so, but it's an emphasis for us. And let me just say this, Peggy. resilient construction is what we have to be about in this industry for the future. What we build has to last, and it has to stand the test of wind forces and water forces and the change in the climate. It has to be able to survive and thrive in a tougher environment, weather-wise and use-wise, than we have right now. So what we want to do is, when we replace our aging infrastructure, we want to make sure that we replace it with a product that is resilient enough to last the test of time. So I think you're seeing a lot more developments in there. Another thing that we're very excited about is precast paving slabs technologies, because we can embed technology in the slab, and when we repair the nation's highways, we repair them with precast paving slabs that have technology embedded in them, and you can read what your traffic pattern is. If a vehicle leaves the highway, for instance, in a remote area, you can know about that and then alert authorities to check it out. And of course, there's inductive charging capacity in some of these panels where we can charge the electric vehicles as they travel. So pretty exciting stuff. And it's all embedded in a precast paving slab.
So when we talk about this, we're not only talking about the type of construction, but we're talking about the data that we're going to get from this, that we're talking about going forward. We're talking about where we say you can't just build these new roads that we're talking about of the future when we talk about EVs. We really have to build it to get the information that we want, and that's what you're talking about. So you can't have these connected cities without truly building it, and that's what you're describing right here.
Absolutely. And when we design these systems, we've got to think about long-term usability and long-term ability for it to last, resilience, okay? This is very, very important. We have to resist the temptation to patch it and move on, and then patch it and move on, because fixing it correctly...
You mean the way we've been doing all these years, patching it?
Peggy, absolutely. You know, and we can keep doing that, but it's not a sustainable way of conducting business. We have the technology and the answer to provide excellent products that will work for many, many decades, and we need to be about doing that.
Well, Ty Gable, president of the National Precast Concrete Association, thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you, Peggy.
Today we are seeing the rise of modular construction. New factors and trends are driving the market, and each manufacturer has a different method for getting the work done. Let's dive in and speak with a consultant about all the ways to develop the best practices for prefab construction. Today I'm welcoming Curtis Fletcher, co-founder and CEO of Prefab Logic, to the show. Curtis, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Curtis, let's talk about some of the market drivers when we talk about modular construction these days. Can you help us understand that?
Sure. The market drivers are really based on lack of labor and cost to build today. The cost have skyrocketed, and a lot of that is really geared around the fact that labor is, especially skilled labor, is hard to come by. The field is really challenged by this. The market driver in terms of using modular is really based on that fact that we can actually produce a product in a factory in a controlled environment, get it to the field at a set amount of time versus in the field where labor may disappear on you.
So when we look at that, do we see that there are some set of trends that are going to continue to push this forward, you know, now in the next 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I believe that is the case. Unfortunately, the trades have not been really present in the school systems and in other segments of the market, you know, pushing younger generations into wanting to be out in the field to construct the way we have for years and years. And this is part of what's happening. And the average laborer out there today is in his 40s or her 40s, and that retirement age for a worker is more around that 50, 51-year-old sort of range. So the retiring community is moving out of the market, and we just don't have enough people coming back in to fill us. So I don't even with a downturn, I don't see the labor issue resolving.
Curtis, is modular construction at the job site, is it the same that we're trying to do when we say we're putting this up? Is it beneficial for the job site, or what really walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. The modular construction, and when I talk about modular construction, I'm really talking about volumetric modular, which really means three-dimensional modules that contain rooms and spaces that are finished out with cabinets, etc. But these modules are beneficial to the job site primarily because it's less disruptive. We're coming in, stacking up modules in a short period of time, getting those installed, and you just have less duration on the job site. The materials are the same, et cetera, so it really is benefiting labor in the field in terms of they're having to haul stuff up and down stairs or elevators and those sorts of things. So yeah, absolutely beneficial to the job site.
And we're talking about the materials. We're using the same kind of materials, the technology to actually produce these in the manufacturing facilities as well?
Yeah, it is the same type of materials. We're not doing anything in a factory that, in terms of the material usage that you wouldn't do in the field. It's the same sort of products. Our hope there is to really refine the use of those products in terms of using the same things over and over again that are dependable, that have been proven out in the marketplace.
So we're actually reducing costs, though, overall. That's the benefit of what we're doing. That's the big excitement about modular construction.
We are reducing cost overall in certain markets. There's certain markets that, if they've got abundant labor, which is pretty hard to find today, that may, make it more competitive. But in certain markets, especially the urban space, our focus is really on multifamily and hospitality projects. And in those types of projects, they usually are in an urban location, and that's where we have a difficult time finding the labor and the resources.
We haven't seen a lot of modular construction yet. It doesn't seem like here in the States we've seen this big push to it or growth to it right now. Will we as we go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. We're experiencing really high demand right now. Now, when I say that, modular for residential construction and hospitality is just getting started. I mean, we're still, I would say, really in that particular sector, 1% or less of the marketplace. So there's a long way to go. But we've got a lot of products in the pipeline in terms of projects that are turning to modular because they just don't have any choice to get this done.
So as we go forward, will we see a lot more excitement for it? I guess what I'm saying is you're seeing the need. There's the need to have to go there. Why aren't we going there a lot faster than what we're seeing at this point?
I think it's just because what you're seeing is a lot of people moving to it in the design, and so it hasn't necessarily been translating to the field. It does take a project normally anywhere from 12 to 24 months to get through the process in terms of, just like any other project, it takes time to get a design, get it permitted, get it ready to go, and get out in the field with the project. So there is a lag there. I would still say that the percentage is going to be pretty low over this next couple of years, but it's increasing rapidly.
What's your projections going forward?
I really project that this market for modular will continue to climb pretty rapidly, but I also project that we will be seeing more standardized products, more automotive-like production in terms of uniformity, right? I mean, a bathroom is a bathroom. We shouldn't be reintroducing it, 20 different ways or times because it really is the same thing. So those sorts of things will get more standardized and be, helpful in the marketplace. And that'll expedite manufacturing. It'll help everybody reduce costs, get more affordable product in the market.
I love that you say bathroom's a bathroom. I love that. So Curtis Fletcher, co-founder and CEO of Prefab Logic, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
When technology is embedded into prefab, XSite Modular likes to take a unique approach to creating a modular facility. In fact, its design process reduces project schedules and offers design flexibility, all while doing this in some of the most challenging locations. As you will discover, this is an exciting time to be talking prefab in construction. And here to talk about the most interesting time-sensitive infrastructures is Amy Marks, CEO of XSite Modular. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Amy, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with XSite Modular and what you guys are doing in the larger prefabrication space.
We actually have two divisions of our company. The first one's actually our critical infrastructure building side, where we build prefabricated data centers and telecom buildings and cable landing stations. I'll kind of set that aside for a minute. And then the other division of our company, we actually do prefabrication consulting for very large-scale projects with mostly technology-embedded buildings for big end users that are doing, really big programs that need to use prefabrication.
So when we talk about the bigger prefabrication market in general, how has it become so popular right now? I think construction is really looking at this, and they're trying to find ways to be successful and grow. And you've found a lot of different ways. I was up on your site, and I was seeing the unique ways that you're doing things. How are you seeing that construction is really embracing it right now?
Well, it's very interesting. Right now, it's a very sexy topic people are talking about.
Sexy and prefab, right? Who'd have thought those two terms come together, right?
Prefab and sexy, they go together. But it's, you're talking about an industry that just recently we've had about $1.4 billion in private equity monies going into the space. So it's a hot topic right now. And the reason it is, if you think about it, construction is actually probably dead last on spend when it comes to digitization and technology. So we're really at the dead bottom of actually innovating and spending money on very innovative things. So if you're putting money into sort of the dead last horse that actually has the biggest payoff, right, for inefficiencies, that's why a lot of money is coming into the space, and people are really taking a second look at construction, especially with prefab, because they realize there's so much to gain, right? And I think that's why we hear about these big stories that are out in the marketplace, but it's actually been around for about 100 years.
In looking at prefab, what's the benefit when you think about prefab? When you look at other types of construction, what makes it unique? Is it the combination of that we're combining on-site construction into a manufacturing environment? We've kind of combined the best of both worlds into something uniquely different. Is that what makes it unique today?
I think, what makes it unique right now is that there are some pressures going on around the world that make this not needed, but literally just has to happen, because we don't have skilled labor around the world. We have very unsafe practices in construction around the world. You've got, an aging out skilled labor pool that's happening all over the world. And we have really complicated construction. Design is becoming more complex on these buildings. So it's not like it's a nice to have, it's a must have, right, that you utilize prefabrication. It's mostly about taking very complicated activities where there's a lot of trade stacking, where there's more than one trade in a particular area, decoupling that out of the construction on-site space and putting that into a very formatted factory where you need less labor, potentially less skilled labor, and you'll be able to produce very complicated elements concurrent to the on-site construction. Once that happens, you can actually reinsert it back into the conventional construction site, and you're gaining speed by concurrency, right? The more things you decouple, the more speed you can take off the end of the schedule. So it's really about certainty, that you're able to create certainty around lots of complicated areas in the build program these days. I think a lot of people, it's about safety as well. I mean, in construction, everybody talks about that in their mission statement, they talk about safety. Well, the way you actually remove on-site accidents from happening, the easiest way is just remove people from on-site. Manufacturing is 6 times safer than construction. Just get them into the factory.
It's an interesting thing. You said a couple things there. You said speed, you said safety, concurrency, all of those things that you just talked about there are a lot of things there that are really important. Number one, pressure points to a construction company. So right now, nobody likes to hear you're taking workers out of the job, but you really said you're taking them out, but you're actually teaching them other ways to do things. So we're actually improving the workforce. Maybe we're taking them out of the injury side of it, but we're actually teaching them and reskilling them in a lot of new ways. Isn't that what we're doing in this as well?
Yeah, I think first you have to, we've always said we don't want to take jobs off site, right? Everyone uses that terminology, but I just need to be very clear. There aren't people on this planet to be on site anymore. We don't have enough people to go on site. So that sort of discussion, that argument against prefab, well, you're taking jobs away. there's no one to fill those jobs right now. We don't have people, skilled labor to fill the jobs, right? So first we have to level set on that. Then you have to say, okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, there's a lot of people who don't want the jobs, period. Let's just get to that point and be honest about it.
People aren't running to go into the trades, right, these days. And there's a skill shortage, and the skilled labor that is there is aging out. So this whole argument of like, why should you move them into the factory? Well, first of all, anytime you move work into the factory, it allows for those older workers, the older workforce, to train apprentices in very simple tasks in stations in the factory where they're able to teach and pair themselves in very small locations, always working at the first floor, maybe even sitting at tables. They're not climbing up and down stairs. They're not outside in the elements. So it's a really great way to bring sort of the skill set with the young apprentices and actually the non-traditional employees. So helmets to hard hat programs. Women are great in factories. Non-traditional employment, because we can co-locate our daycare with the factory, or the men that are doing daycare with the factory, is a very socially acceptable place to work. And we get to go to the same location every day and work in a company that is a place, as opposed to being, all over the place on different job sites. So there's a real benefit in safety, but also in bringing other people to this industry that we desperately need, and also diversity and inclusion to this industry that is incredibly needed. So I think there's so many benefits to moving the work from the job site into a factory. It's almost immeasurable.
So we're really talking about, this is a global business. So if we in this country don't step up, we're going to be behind. We've already been behind, and we're talking about what's happening on 5G. We're saying that this is going to be an area that we're going to be behind, and we're already been behind in construction. But this gives us an opportunity to really step up the game and to be leapfrogging what we need to do in a lot of areas right now. We have the capability, and you're saying right now this is an industry that can really do something more faster, quicker, and be safer and provide more jobs. That's what you're describing.
Yeah, it's happening all over the world right now. I would say we're definitely behind. I hate to say it like that, but I know it's to be true. So as an example, this is already happening in the UK with government backing, promoting the use of prefabrication. The same thing in Australia, the same thing in China. In Singapore, a small little country, they've spent 450 million Sing on a productivity initiative in construction. They are currently doing 33 volumetric modular buildings right now, just in Singapore, that are mostly mid and high rise. And you will not get a building permit there without the use of prefabrication. They won't issue it to you. So lots of countries are coming up with those types of standards. And I know, because I sat on the international panel to develop those standards with Singapore, they are worlds ahead of us. They're the Silicon Valley right now of prefabrication. And we are behind, mostly because our government doesn't necessarily want to be involved in making those decisions at the very local level of building permits. But it's not about that. It's about the United States is going to be losing out on our ability to compete in the construction and infrastructure market unless we start putting some attention to this area.
But we have a president that's pushed forward getting permits quicker. He said we want to get permits easier, quicker. Is it now understanding what prefab is all about, or is it a combination of both?
I think the constraints really are that, look, at the end of the day, you have very large construction companies. We're very fragmented, though, in the United States, right? We have thousands of construction companies. But the very largest ones even don't really integrate prefabrication on a large-scale basis yet. They don't necessarily have that skill set. They're just learning that. And they have what I call process entropy. Their processes are not set up to enable prefab, right? So what do I mean by that? So if for 100 years you've been going to your plumber and your electrician and your carpenter, and you've been saying, give me numbers for all these estimates I need to do, and once we get the job, we're going to give you the job. Well, unfortunately, prefabrication isn't about only single trade. Where you really get the most bang for your buck is when you're going to integrate multi-trade prefab. So now, if I want to integrate something like a plant room, a modular plant room that has electrical, structural steel, mechanical in it, I'm no longer going to those tradesmen anymore. I need to go to a manufacturer that's multi-trade. So all my relationships, all my processes on how I knew how to conceptualize how to do estimates are invalid now. And unfortunately, the only way they try to validate them is to go back to their tradesmen and say, well, if I do it this way, is it more expensive or less expensive? Now, if you're the guy losing work, you say it's more expensive for us to use prefab. But at the end of the day, that's just not true. We're just not conceptualizing estimates on element-centric, prefabricated element-centric basis. We're doing that on trade-centric basis right now. So it's just our processes don't align with enabling more prefab at the moment.
Well, I have to tell you, Amy Marks, CEO of XSite Modular, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Off-site manufacturing is the next great frontier for you in the construction industry, and construction companies seem to be embracing the opportunity. In fact, the House of Lords even refers to this as off-site manufacturer, or OSM. According to the numbers, more than 81% plan to either use off-site the same or more often in the future. The opportunities are there, and off-site manufacturing should play a pivotal role in increasing productivity, improving quality, and most certainly reducing environmental impacts as well as reducing labor. But as I mentioned earlier on the show, we need to determine how to enable a culture shift. So for my final segment, I want to offer up some tangible steps to help you understand prefab even more. The National Institute of Building Sciences Off-Site Construction Council offers some guidelines, and keeping that in mind, I thought I would add a few of my own. Step 1, select an off-site location, keeping the team in mind. In real estate, they say location, location, location. The same is true for off-site construction. A location that is too far simply won't save time. In the early stages, a team approach must also be established. Often the design team will have the modular concept early in a schematic design. The manufacturer will also take ownership of the design. The contractual agreement between a modular builder and the design team becomes so critical here. The modular builder may even aid in developing design specs and writing non-proprietary bid documents. It's all about the communication, right? Collaborative technology and integrated design approach are crucial for all these projects. Next, let's establish the schedule. On these projects, the phasing and sequencing is different. Decisions need to be made sooner, and the changes to the scope need to be avoided at all costs. It's a mindset shift, but a schedule can be more predictable and timed concurrently if it's done up front. As the builder, for instance, it's important to produce an overall schedule of how all the tasks are integrated. Compared to traditional projects, these are often have fewer change orders, which makes the whole construction process even faster. Now, another key step is to define the project scope. What type of products, systems, and assemblies are used on the project? What type of project delivery method will be used? Will it be a design build or something completely different? This needs to be determined up front. Next, let's get all the pieces in place. This is your project setup. This includes certification, permitting, site mobilization, material procurement, transportation and logistics, establishing the site and crane set installation, just to name a few. Finally, let's talk about commissioning. I don't think we can discuss this enough. Often it won't be different than on-site buildings. Rather, it varies based on the contract, specifications, and the scope. Warranties can differ based on the responsibilities listed in the contract as well. But it is an important step nonetheless, and this is just the beginning. Off-site construction requires us to think in new and different ways. But once we do, we will reap incredible benefits. We will see 80% lower accident rates. We will see less waste and faster timelines. We will increase the number of women on construction projects. But most importantly, we will only make this happen when we all work together. And thanks for watching ConstructTech TV, your fierce advocates for construction.